Right, hello everyone, and welcome to JNUC 2022, and welcome to the Jamf School Interactive Lab session. My name is Curtis Armstrong, and I'm an Education K-12 Systems Engineer here at Jamf. And I'm really excited to show you how easy it is to get Jamf School set up in your environment today. So this presentation will walk us through getting Jamf School set up in a basic configuration to enroll and manage Apple devices. This is going to be our agenda for today, starting off with a brief introduction into Jamf School, and then we'll move into the wonderful and easy setup assistant. So even if tech's not your strong suit, we'll make this as easy as possible. Next, we will prepare Jamf School by building some groups, adding apps, building profiles, and adding some users. And then finally, we will enroll and deploy our devices. So without further ado, let's dive in. The need for simplified education technology workflows is really at an all-time high. Jamf School's web-based interface provides the best learning experience for students. Deploying, managing, and securing Mac, iPad, iPhone, and Apple TV has really never been simpler. Jamf School is purpose-built Apple mobile device management for schools, which empowers teachers and parents and students with a powerful set of apps that can be used anywhere to enhance learning. It's very quick and easy to get set up, and once configured, lets us inventory, deploy, and secure Apple devices with ease. And if you want to learn more, you can find out more about Jamf School, certainly by visiting our website. So let's get started. So Jamf School provides a delightful setup assistant to help configure Jamf School quickly and easily. 6 quick steps, and you are ready to roll. So the very first thing that we need to do is create an Apple push certificate. This allows secure communication between Jamf School, Apple servers, and managed devices. Follow the simple steps here to download the signing request in step 1, and then navigate over into your Apple APNS portal to create your certificate. We'll do that offline. Then you're going to come back to this screen to upload it back into Jamf School. And just a reminder that you do need to do this once per year as you move forward. So next, we're going to move on to user creation. And this can be done in a lot of different ways, but here we're going to upload a CSV file with users and the device serial numbers that they'll be assigned to. It's really nice how we can do that ahead of any device actually even getting enrolled. It's very easy to do. So as you can see here, lots of good information on the CSV file. We can download that template and pre-populate a lot of these attributes about users and even the devices to which they'll be associated to. So once you've downloaded that CSV file, that template, you'll upload it back into Jamf School with all the information. Now, it might take a little time to get that uploaded. Mine was a little faster because I've only got a couple of users here. So let's take a look at what those users look like. So here's an example of my template that I used. And you can see I've got just a student and a teacher here. But I've also been able to, through this upload, put the student into a group, the teachers into a group, and even pre-assign them a serial number for a device that we will later enroll. So speaking of enrollment, the next step we're going to do is how are we going to enroll devices? In most organizations, you'll use Apple School Manager to assign devices to Jamf School for enrollment. And that's what we're going to do today as well. And while we're on this page, let's also set our default naming convention for those enrolled devices. Jamf School's got a lot of great variables that we can use in the naming process, whether that's a device name, filling in some attributes in a profile, or on a lock screen. So in this case, we're actually just going to use the serial number, and then we're going to start to set up that connection with Apple School Manager. Following a similar workflow that we did with the APNS piece in step 1, first we're going to download that public key by clicking that button right there, and then follow the steps over in Apple School Manager to create an MDM server record and then download that server token. It's very important that we do that because that maintains that connection between Jamf School and Apple School Manager. So as you assign devices, they'll show up in Jamf School. It's always helpful to set a few settings as well, making sure that users don't need to put their Apple IDs in to download to install apps that are coming from Jamf School. And we can also send out an automated invitation for apps and for books primarily. There's a reason for that. So next, speaking of apps and books, let's go on to volume purchasing, which is one of those final steps there. So as we're going through this volume purchasing piece, it's pretty straightforward. Again, it's the same process that we're going to use for creating the APNS and the enrollment profile. So we've got that done. Now, the next step is we're created with an option to create our first profile. So this may be for Wi-Fi, there may be some configuration, some security settings, things like that. And know that we can always come back to this, which we will a little bit later, and modify this profile a little bit just to make sure it's doing the things that we want it to do. But in this example, I'm actually creating a payload for one of the Wi-Fi networks that we have here so that down the road we can have that available to us. Now, we also have some restrictions that we can put in place, and this is a nice opportunity to go and just check a few of these. I do want to reiterate that, just put in the restrictions that you need to do. And then look at that. Setup assistance done. We've got our basics set up, and now we are at the dashboard of Jamf School, which is a really great interface. Lots of good information here to set that up. So now we want to build some groups and add some users, build some groups. Oh, we added users earlier. Make some groups, make sure that the groups that we have created are defined properly and have the right settings. And because device groups are the primary way that we deploy content like restrictions and configuration profiles and applications, we want to make sure we are going to create some device groups as well. All right. So let's check out our users for a moment here. So over on the left-hand side is where you'll access all your settings. So let's take a peek at the user groups. So there's a few things I'd like to point out to clarify here. We do have a student group and a teacher group that we created via that CSV upload. And then I also added a class as well, just so we could identify a little bit about that. In that class, now classes are different than groups. They are a group, but they're a little bit unique in the sense that each class is going to have at least one student, at least one teacher. Here's where you can also add shared iPads if you want to include those in a class as well. We're not going to do that today, but we do have that option inside of any given class. So if we dive into that class a little bit, we can see we have one teacher assigned and we have one student assigned. And if you had an eagle eye and you were looking at that CSV I showed briefly, you would see that those were the two users that I uploaded as part of that. All right. So a couple things to note about the two groups. There's an app, the teacher app, and we want to make sure that anybody that's in that teacher group is allowed to use that application. If we don't, we could have a little bit of unintended consequences there. So let's make sure we set that teacher user group to allow. Conversely, we also want to make sure that anyone in a student group cannot use that teacher app. So we want to come in here and make sure that we set the teacher app for students to deny. Those are just a couple of steps, probably the two most common ones I see missed when folks are using the teacher and student apps, is they forget to set that one little part. Okay, on to devices. So device groups, as I mentioned, is how we deploy the assets, the applications, the books, the PDFs, everything like that. And you can see we currently don't have any groups built, so we're definitely going to want to set that group up. And look at that, we click that Add Group button. And in this case, we're actually going to create a smart group looking for all of the iPads that get enrolled as they get enrolled. We can skip over this screen. This sort of just defines what the icon looks like and things like that. So we have an option to finish, but we're not going to do that yet. We want to move on to the next item because Jamf School, in its efficiency, kind of makes an assumption that since you're building a group, you probably want to do things with that group. You're not just building it for fun. So yeah, actually, I do want to add some profiles to this group. So I can set those to automatically install in this group when a device gets added. I can also select applications that I want to install when a device gets added to this group. We're not going to do that in this section. We are going to assign them in the actual apps section of Jamf School a little bit later. So we can go ahead and click the next button there and move on to the next section. But just know that that is there. It's very helpful. It's very easy. Now, we don't have any documents. Those are going to be EPUBs, books, or PDFs. But again, we have that option to add these in at this point, which is nice. But we'll skip over that. And now, because we chose a smart group, we have to define what's smart about this group. So we're going to add some filters. And you can see there's lots of them here. But we're specifically looking for all iPads. So we're going to select iPad in that section there. And you'll notice that the account is 0 right now because we don't have any devices enrolled. But as every iPad enrolls into Jamf School, it's going to automatically be added to this group. And anything that you have scoped to that group is going to install on that iPad, which is wonderful. Now, we want to make a group just like this for Macs as well. So we're going to follow that same pattern, except since I've already shown you all the options there, we're just going to hit the finish button, and it takes us right to the end game here where we can select our filters. Now, Macs, there's lots of different types of Macs. So, of course, this is going to be unique to your organization, but I'm just going to go through here and pretty much select all of the different types of Macs that could be. And you may find that you want to do different groups, smart groups for different device types based on what you want, based on the use case for those. But now that we have that built, we now have a smart group that's looking for every Mac that we enroll and a smart group looking for every iPad that we enroll. Okay, now we've got our groups built. That's awesome. Let's check on enrollment settings. This is the sort of the key to the front door of Jamf School. This is how a device gets in to Jamf through Jamf School, is through its enrollment profile. All right. So here we're actually going to go into our profiles section. You'll see there's 2 sections of profiles. There's the overview, which is our configuration profiles. These are things that affect the device after it's been enrolled. Then there's the automated device enrollment, which is what we want to look at. Now, we built a default one right at the beginning of the setup assistant. Let's go into that one and just change the name a little bit so it's more descriptive. We're going to call this the iPad enrollment. Obviously, we've got some support information in there. Again, we can define that name and how that is set on devices. And what's nice about this is if you have multiple enrollment profiles, you can set different naming conventions. If you have only one, though, you can check this wonderful box down there, and that will automatically assign this to all incoming devices. Right. And then you can also do some other settings here. We want to make sure that's not removable. And then we do want to uncheck on onboarding the require authentication, because right now we don't have anything set up to do authentication. So that one looks pretty good, but that's only for iPads. We need to build a Mac one. So what are we going to call this one? Well, of course, Mac enrollment. And we're going to put in, even though it's optional, I do recommend, because this is information that comes up while the device is getting set up for users. In case the device is missing, they'll know who to contact. And then let's also set this name so that it's unique on every device to being the serial number. And we can skip all of the setup steps, maybe except for location services, because that one's always going to come back to haunt you. And so we want to make sure we have that. And then we also have some options where when that first user is created, are they a standard account or an admin account? We also have the ability in Jamf School to pre-populate the user and account name to match that user that's already been pre-assigned in Jamf School. So all the user has to do is then put in a password. It can be any password they want. We've got a couple other settings here that we want to make sure that the user can't edit that information after they put it in. You can also add a hidden macOS administrator account for administrative purposes. If it's an Apple Silicon device, we can turn on a setting to automatically install Rosetta, the translator app for non-universal applications, so the end user, doesn't get prompted to get that. So, all right, looks like we have a Mac enrollment profile built. Let's make sure a couple of settings. We want to make sure that's unchecked. Okay, that all looks good. We can also turn on recovery lock passwords. So for Apple Silicon devices, preventing those devices from booting into the recovery partition. We can also set EFI password for Intel machines. But I think that right now we've got our two enrollment profiles, one for Mac and one for iOS, all built out. All right. Next up, we have the teacher and student app settings. So as I mentioned, we did a little bit of work early on around making sure that the teacher users assigned to devices were allowed to use the student app, the teacher app, and that the students were not allowed to use the teacher app. So let's take a deeper dive into some of the settings that we can set on the Jamf School side to empower teachers to be able to use that teacher app in the classroom from a management perspective. So anything that we want to make changes to in Jamf School from an organizational level, we're going to do in the organization section. Settings, adding locations, adding administrators. But in this case, we're going to dive into settings, and we see a whole plethora of different things that we can change and edit. So definitely in your own environment, you'll come in here and make settings that make sense. But in this case, we're going to dive into the student settings. So this is basically what the end user experience on the student app is and what kind of things they can do. So, maybe it is allow the user to prompt the device to check into Jamf School, or maybe you allow them to clear a passcode and reset that, assuming you have a config profile already placed on that. There is a raise hand feature inside of Jamf School that allows a teacher to reach out and request help from a teacher. So you probably want to set this time frame to a reasonable time so you're not students aren't disrupting teachers at all hours of the day. And then also there's a great parent app, and you can turn on that QR code option so that parents can connect the parent app to their student device for after school management as well. Now, onto the Jamf School teacher side of things. These are the functions of the Jamf School teacher app and what the teacher is able to do from their device to affect devices that the students are using in their class at that moment. Again, up to you in terms of how you want to configure these. I typically turn them all on, at least when I'm initially testing this out, so that I can see what those functions actually do, and then make that determination. Another nice thing is if you have, in this case, this checkbox, if you have extra licenses, you can empower or enable a teacher to automatically install those apps with extra licenses onto their class set of devices. All right, and we'll make sure we've got all the rest of this all set. There is a default time for the restrictions set by the teacher. They can go a little higher, a little below that if they want. And also note that there's a lot of apps that the teacher can hide on the student devices. So just make sure that those are all available for the teacher to be able to select from the teacher's interface to be able to hide those apps ultimately on the student device. All right, placeholders. Placeholders are one of my favorite subjects. Placeholders are a great way to ensure that certain device-specific attributes are assigned to the device when it enrolls, or even after it has enrolled. So let's dive in and take a peek at placeholders. So when talking about placeholders, it's good to know about static groups. As we went in, we created some static groups. We also created some smart groups. Now with placeholders, you can actually define a device where a device is placed inside of a static group or multiple static groups. Can't do this with smart groups because the smart groups, again, those are criteria based. They have to be, something about the device to make determines if it's in that smart group or not. But if we come over to the automated device enrollment section, here's where we will see all of the devices that we have assigned to Jamf School inside of Apple School Manager. So this is a great little layout here. We can also see if we have uploaded placeholders in the past, if we've assigned those devices to specific users, if there's asset tags, because those are pretty static, I hope, unless the kid peels it off. We can upload that information, again, ahead of that device ever being enrolled. We can also set the user's name, the static groups. Notice here, too, the status. The status right now says no profile assigned, which means that even though we assigned it in at Apple School Manager, if we set that device up, it is not going to enroll in Jamf School, and that's not what we want. We want to actually assign that to a enrollment profile. Now notice these checkboxes on the side here. These are great. They show up in apps, in profiles, in these automated device enrollment placeholders. But when you check a box, it creates these magic buttons that appear. And there's also a filter. So let's say you had 1,000 devices mixed type and you just want to find all your iPads. You can use that filter and then check the top box and it will select those. Select the assigned profile, and then we'll see that status change to yellow. Okay, yellow's an interesting color. Profile assigned. We're still not all the way there yet, just so we're clear here. But this is good. This is where you at least want your devices to be, because this ensures that when that device is erased and set up, it will definitely enroll into Jamf School. Okay, on to profiles and app scoping. So we'll touch on this. We'll take a peek at profiles and how to distribute apps to our devices as well. All right, so in our apps section, let's head over to our apps and to our inventory. Now, similar to the automated device enrollment, this is the location where any app that you acquire, purchase, I use purchase, but they can be free too. So let's use acquire from Apple School Manager, and then assign to a location token that is placed in Jamf School will show up here. We can see lots of good information, what type of device this runs on, if it's a volume purchase, how many licenses we have. And let's say you went out and you just got a bunch of apps. They haven't shown up yet. Don't worry, they will in a few minutes. But if you're super impatient like me, you can click that Sync with Apple School Manager and it will reach out automatically and fetch any of those new licenses. And you'll notice the check boxes on the side there. We'll touch on those. But right from this screen here, we could distribute some app content without even going into an individual app. I can select a handful of apps that I know I want to distribute to the same group or multiple groups. Click Edit Scope, click in there, and look at, they're my groups. I'm going to add them in. I could add another group in there if I knew I wanted to add more. Double check our default behavior, automatic installation, device-based assignment, and there, whoa, we did it. We're done. We just deployed apps to devices that will soon show up and get enrolled. But let's say we wanted to get a little bit more granular, which sometimes we need to do. So in the case of like the student app, we don't have to do anything super fancy, but we may want to configure some settings. We can also see down here a nice detailed layout of which devices those apps and groups those apps have been assigned to. If we needed to add an app configuration, or more importantly, let's say we want to prevent the students from removing this app. So as long as you're running iOS 14, you're good to go. We assign those devices to our group, and there we go. We did it. We're done with the assigning apps part. Very easy to do. Now let's move on to some configuration profiles. We did build one early on. We'll take a peek at that. But in this section for overview is where you're going to find your payloads there. next here. Yeah, there we go. And so if we go into our overview, we'll see any profiles that we have built. Again, very easy to, if we wanted to, we could deploy those payloads, those restriction profiles right from within this screen by clicking on the ever handy dandy checkboxes there, and you'll notice the magic buttons. We can edit the scope. We can deploy those out to our groups of devices that we've built. And there we go again, very, very easy and efficient. But let's say we wanted to create a new profile. How do we do that? All right, well, let's go in. We create a profile. In this case, we're actually going to create a Mac profile, device enrollment based. And we're, since this is going to encompass all of our Macs, we're just going to call this the general Mac settings. Works for me. There is a time filter. We're not going to use that today, but that's an interesting use case where you may want to have a profile that's active during a certain period of time and then not at another period, like maybe when students go home. So we hit the finish button, and now we're presented with all the payloads for macOS. So there's a lot going on here, but basically every configuration profile can have one or more payloads inside of it. And you can create as many configuration profiles as you feel that you need. On the Mac side of things, maybe we want to look at system preferences and hide a few of the options there, maybe profiles, for example. We just want to gray that out so a user can't get in there and poke around. And then on the functionality side, maybe we want to make some changes to settings. Maybe we want to not turn off the caching option for Mac OS, so that doesn't fill up their hard drive with useless stuff. And from there, we can, I think that's about it. And we can go ahead and we can save that as well. Now, we do have to set the scope, of course. We're going to go into that familiar checkbox, check all our Macs, and then hit save. Awesome. So let's go ahead and actually create one more, and then we'll really see the fruits of our labor after we're done with this one. So in this case, we're going to create another profile, but this time we're going to do iOS, device-based, and we're going to call this the student settings. Right? Student classroom settings. Beautiful. So how does this device behave in the classroom? And again, when you layer these profiles too, also note that most restrictive will always win. So you don't have to duplicate. If you're making multiple profiles, you don't have to duplicate efforts. I think we definitely want to defer any software updates so that we don't get caught up in our standardized testing with being out of compliance. And then we also want to make some sure we have some preset settings for the classroom app. And then we also, of course, want to turn off the ability to add VPN configurations as well. Usually a good thing. We can go ahead, we can hit save to make sure that our changes are saved. Then we go into the scope and again, define our scope as, we'll just do all iPads for this one. So there we go. We've got that all set up. And I think we can move on to device setup. Hooray, we're there. We got there, we did it. And that was quick. I mean, between the setup assistant and configuring some groups, adding some apps, adding some configuration profiles, this is looking really, really good. So let's move on to see what happens on an iPad as we get that set up. I'm going to start there, and we should see that. There we go. And because we've set this up as automated device enrollment, it will be presented with that remote management screen. And notice there's no way to leave that. We can go back or forward, but we're not allowed to skip that. And then we set the location services. And now this device is fully enrolled in Jamf School. It has fallen into the All iPads group, and it has starting to obtain the apps and has received all the configuration settings that we have defined for those groups. Piece of cake, we set up Jamf School in less than a half an hour, start to finish. You can do it too. It's extremely easy. So thank you all for watching and spending a half hour of your time with me, and look forward to talking with you in the future, and have a great JNUC 2022.